This is our positive and negative space practice. So you want to start by using the things we've learned in class. So this is a one-to-one drawing. The scale is 1:1. So I'm using my pencil to measure some of the landmarks that I see along the edges. So I can make sure I'm starting and finishing my shapes exactly where they are. And then I'm also going to do a little quadrant on there to help me out. You don't need to do the quadrant, but if it helps you, please use it. So remember, when we start drawing this, we don't want to focus on those black scissor shapes. I'm focusing on those white negative space areas and trying to get them as close to accurate as possible. That's going to create a really accurate proportion drawing. So remember, that negative space is just as important, if not more important, than the positive space. So getting those spaces accurate will give you an accurate drawing. And then don't forget, use your tools. Use your pencil to measure the angle, measure the spaces. Since this is 1:1, this is absolutely easier to do. So I'm looking at the angle. Okay, so where does that shape come up? And then what kind of shape does that make? So it crosses over the center a little bit. It almost looks like a mouth to me, or like a triangle. So you can see that's what I'm focusing on, is that I'm trying to draw the white shape. And then there's just a tiny bit of space between there. And this is challenging, so if you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Just draw light till you get it right. So I'm looking and I'm measuring. And then I'm looking and measuring. And then I kind of jump around. That's kind of just how I do things. I don't like to focus on one area too much, because then if that part's off, the whole thing will become off. So I'm moving on to this area. You can absolutely stick with one quadrant at a time, though, if that's what you want to do. And then that shape in the middle there kind of looks like, I believe, was it a rhombus? So it has kind of a curve right there. So this is also a good way to be able to flip your brain. So I'm looking at that space. It looks like a little triangle. Using my pencil to measure the angle, make sure it's correct. And then remember, just kind of start out light, and then we're going to outline it darker when we're finished. Alright, so I'm getting near the end. I'm doing a little measurement. So I can see the edge of that one comes up to the middle of that shape over there. So I'm always comparing one shape to another, one shape to another, one shape to another. All right, I'm about finished. All right, so once you get your contour outline done, what I want you to do is outline it, and then you are going to create a dark background. So we're going to flip it. So for this, I want to be a little bit more creative. So instead of just shading it with my pencil, I decided to shade it with a color pencil. So I'm outlining all my lines, and then I'm going to shade it. All right, then to make it a little more interesting, after I went over it with the blue, I went over it with a little bit of yellow just to kind of make it look a little more textured. All right, and the next one. So this is one of my jade plants. So again, I'm going to start with the quadrant. So this is more of an organic shape. And again, I'm just going to start by focusing on those white shapes. And to me, it's almost easier to draw these organic shapes than it is the geometric shapes for some reason. But I'm going slow, I'm using my pencil to measure, and I'm using that loose quadrant I drew to make sure things are where they're supposed to be. So I'm drawing light until I get it where I want. Alright, so again, as I'm going along, I'm focusing on those negative shapes. So what does the white space look like? So it has that little chunk taken out of it, and then it crosses over and it goes up, goes around, and then it almost makes like a reverse little chunk shape right there. Just doing some measuring. And let's speed this up a little bit. Okay, so for this one, I'm going to do something a little different with the background. I'm going to take a fine pen. I'm going to do a nice outline of all my negative shapes. And then instead of just shading it black, I'm going to create a little line design pattern in the background. So my positive space is staying white, just like in the scissors. And then the negative space, I'm going to create a little line pattern instead of shading it. All right, and there we go. It's pretty easy, but looks pretty cool. Okay, so now the back of the worksheet, I have some actual pictures. So it is the same process, except you need to not think about the details of what you're looking at and just draw the silhouette, the shape. So again, I'm just looking at the negative spaces. I did a little quadrant just to help me out. And I'm just thinking about those white spaces. I'm using my pencil to measure angles. I'm using my pencil to measure distance, and I'm always comparing one shape to another. So it is the same method. I'm not worried about any of the details. I'm not worried about the cat. I'm not worried about the shading inside the mug that I see. I'm not worried about any details. It's the same thing, but I'm trying to get you guys to be able to just see those negative spaces and not be distracted by other things. But it is exactly the same method. Alright, then for this one, I'm going to use my thin pen again, and instead of lines, I'm just going to do some little swirls in the background, some overlapping swirls to create some interest, and then I'm going to leave my positive space white. Alright, last one is the spray bottle. So again, it's the same method. The only difference is now this is a real image and you're distracted by details in the image. So I'm not worried about any of the details. I'm not worried about the 32-ounce sticker. I'm not worried about the lines on the cap. I'm just focused on those negative spaces around the object. And I'm just focusing on drawing those accurately. And then by doing that, I will have a spray bottle that is an accurate proportion. So switching your brain to really focus on the spaces around and between your subject. And let's speed it up a little bit. Alright, then for the background on this one, I decided just to make it red. So in your work, just make sure you're at least shading the background one solid color or value. Do not use marker because if you use marker, it's going to bleed through the paper. But once you get finished with your assignment, please let me check it off for you. And I know by doing this, you have gotten better at drawing negative spaces and accurate proportions. So good job.